FMPP program means to rural communities and how it improves access to food.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you.
And, and Brandon, just there's two questions. One of which there was a question, I think it was Lena. She wanted to know if you're not sure what programs you might qualify for, would someone be willing to chat with one-on-one to figure out if there might be options available? And so there's a couple of things. Of course, Brandon and I would be happy to talk with you one-on-one. And also there are, USDA has so many different programs. And I know later on when I'm talking about the 2501, there are a lot of different organizations that can just sit with you. Of course, now in a COVID environment, over the phone or virtual, and just help navigate you through many of those different programs. And Brandon, if you could, because I know we have a couple of questions. Brandy as well as Yolanda are both asking, can you spend a little more time talking about what it takes to become a reviewer? Because I know USDA is always looking for grant reviewers. So can you spend a little time talking about that?
Sure, we'll cover this in depth tomorrow, but essentially, whenever a call for proposal opens up, simultaneously at that same time, most of these agencies look for grant reviewers. Now, you don't have to be a university person. You don't have to have any particular educational backgrounds. What you do have to do is have experience in the fields that grant's going to be covering. So for example, for the FMPP, they may be looking for farmers who sell at farmers markets. They may be looking for market managers. They do take university personnel and personnel from NGOs. But what they're trying to do is get as wide a cast as wide as net as they can to get people from all different fields who have experience dealing with the issue that the grant covers. So for example, we're going to be talking about the Southern Sierra in a minute. We just keep a roster of reviewers for folks who come in, and we look for reviewers from nonprofits. We are very, very heavily pharma focused, so we get reviewers. We look for reviewers who are producers, be they ranchers, farmers, any type of agricultural production activity. You have to be willing to read the grants. Most of them do pay. Some of them don't, but most of them do pay a small stipend for your time to review the grants. But that's essentially, once you see a grant call come out and you're not ready to apply for it, but you might be interested in being a reviewer, just look for that. Look for the link and contact the agency and say you'd be interested in being a reviewer. And I can't think of any better way to learn how to write these grants than to be a reviewer, where you could see it from behind the scenes, what goes on and what makes a good grant versus what makes a bad grant. So think that answered it, Carrie?
I think so. Thanks.
Okay, and we'll cover this again tomorrow. There was another question in here, which is, once again, we're going to cover this tomorrow, but do you need a farm number for a farmer's market or a roadside stand? Food systems are highly localized, so it's hard for me to answer that question not knowing where you're based at, because that can go down as granular as county to county or even municipality to municipality. If you're talking about the farm and tract number that FSA requires for many of their programs, such as Nrcs, many farmers markets, in my experience, do not require that. But once again, if it's something you're concerned about, you need to check with your local authorities to find out what's required. And I'm trying to make sure we cover all the questions. Let's see, Miss Sapple Island. Okay. Okay, so please, I encourage you, especially if you're a nonprofit organization that's working with farmers and looking for and looking for ways to help your farmers become more financially viable, to take a hard look at these programs. And the other thing I would suggest is don't be bashful in applying for these. One of the things USDA does across all these programs is try to make sure they build geographic diversity. So for example, in this last round of FMPP projects, the Virgin Islands got it. They had never applied for this, even though their farmers markets are a staple of their agricultural community down there. They had never applied for this. And so they applied and they were awarded one in this last round of funding. So, and most folks who have applied for these will be more than happy to share their experiences with you. So if there's no other questions, we're making pretty good. Somebody asked about in-kind contributions. We'll talk about that when we talk about it a little bit about the nuts and bolts of grant writing tomorrow. But it depends from program to program on what that in-kind is going to look at. Some programs let you do 100% of your in-kind, 100% of your match and in-kind, some don't. So we'll cover that in a little bit more depth tomorrow. Okay. The next programs that we want to talk about are the Pharma Opportunities and Training Outreach, or PHOTO. Once again, like the LAMP program, this is a new program that consolidated two existing programs. And the goals of the two programs we're about to talk about is to provide training and technical assistance to farmers and ranchers. And the two programs that make up the PHOTO program are the Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program, better known as BFRDP, and the Outreach and Assistance to Socially Disadvantaged and Veteran Farmers and Rancher Program, also known as Section 2501 or the 2501 grant. We'll talk about the Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program first. This is the USDA's flagship program for funding new and beginning farmer training programs. I believe it's up to $200,000 a year for up to a 3-year project for a total of $600,000. This is an extremely competitive program. And I think the funding level's right around $25 million this year. One of the ways this program was utilized is the University of Georgia partnered with Georgia Organics and Fort Valley State University to do a journeyman farmer apprenticeship program. So that's me and one of the apprentices. So they were able to develop 3 tracks, livestock production, vegetable production, and fruit tree production. And so the first part of the program was all classroom related stuff, all the stuff that we see in a lot of our better training programs. And that's how to do your financials, how to develop a marketing plan, how to develop a business plan, that type of stuff. And then they were matched up with farmers to do some actual on-hands work, and they were able to pay the apprentices. That's what I'm liking about some of these, both this and the 2501, is that you can now increasingly give participants stipends. So it's kind of hard if someone wants to get into farming to have them work with a farmer and you're not paying them. And, they can't work another job because they're obviously doing the training. And so I think they just last year included a component, what they call their micro component, where they specifically set aside money for new organizations who are not ready to apply for these large $600,000 grants to do a pilot project. And I think there's one section for 50,000 and under, and then there's another one for 100,000 and under. So don't let that 600,000 number intimidate you. They do have additional programs for smaller funding. And to tell you a little bit about the Beginning Farmer and Rancher program, we have Dr. Elizabeth Miles with Alcorn State University, who was awarded a BFRDP grant. I don't know if it's been a year, if it's been 2 years, but Dr. Miles can now tell you. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Miles.
Okay, good morning, Brendan. How are you doing this morning?
All right.
Okay, hello to everyone and the panelists. I am Dr. Elizabeth Miles. I am the Associate Director for the Mississippi Small Farm and Agribusiness Center here at Alcorn State University. And I'm located in the School of Agriculture and Applied Sciences, the extension program. And for those that don't know about Alcorn, we're the oldest public historically Black land grant institution in the US. And we're located in Norman, Mississippi. And I am a little bit about myself. Then I'm going to talk about the beginning Farmers and Ranchers Development Program and the grant that Alcorn State University received. A little bit about myself. I'm originally from Patterson, Mississippi, raised on a family farm there in Patterson, Mississippi. So I'm a farmer by nature. Brendan, you probably didn't know that. So this is something I love to do. Been at Alcorn now over two decades, working with small farmers. And what I'm here to talk about today is the beginning Farmers and Ranchers Development Program. Back in 2016, Alcorn State University, we applied for the beginning Farmers, Ranchers and Development Program. We was not awarded, Brennan, back in 2016. However, we received the proposal reviewers' comments. We went back and made those corrections, and then we resubmitted. So we was fortunate in 2018 to be awarded a 3-year grant for $600,000 3 years. So we are now into our 2nd year of the New Beginning Farmers and Ranchers program here in Mississippi. The name of the program here is the Farm Management Education Program for New Beginning Farmers and Ranchers. And of course, the purpose of this program is to provide education and technical assistance to new beginning farmers and ranchers here in Mississippi. Now, USDA definition, Brendan, of a new beginning farmers are those farmers that have farmed 10 years or less. So, Brendan, we was awarded this grant to work with any new beginning farmers and ranchers and veterans in Mississippi. It was our goal over the 3-year period to reach 300 farmers, but to date, we have reached over 500 new beginning farmers and ranchers here in Mississippi. The program is well received. We are working with 5 non-governmental organizations here in Mississippi that awarded 5% of these funds that actually goes to the NGO. And we're working with the National Center for Appropriate Technology. We're working with the Alliance of Sustainable Farms, Milestone Cooperative Association, the Mid-South Progressive Agriculture Group, and the Mississippi Meat Goat Producers Cooperative Grant. And what we're doing inside this grant, we're looking at farmers that's interested in livestock and vegetables. And we're providing curriculum and training and modules as it relates to basic crop and livestock production. We're looking at marketing, diversification and direct marketing, food safety, farm financial management and risk management. And we talked about the available USDA programs and the Farm Bill. And what we're doing now is actually having these farmers go through, which is year 2, a farm plan. So they're actually doing a farm business plan. The first year they was in the classrooms, all year 1 doing activities in the classroom. And then the 2nd year, we're working on the actual business plan. And then in year 3, we're planning to actually have these farmers to implement what they have put inside of their farm management education program inside the business plan. So this is a very rewarding program. Brennan, we are excited to be awarded this program, and it's been well received again here in Mississippi. And we are into our 2nd year. And it's a very, very competitive grant. Like you said, Brendan, it's extremely competitive. So we was excited once we was awarded the project. Just a few tips about when you're working with different grants, applying for grants, make sure you follow that RFP, which is the request for proposal, or the RFA, which is the request for application. Have clear goals and objectives, know where you want to go, have a clear plan, have your partnerships in place that you're going to work with your different partners, have a clear objective on your budgets, your approaches that you want to take. All that is critical. So I ask that you do a concept, kind of narrow it out on what you want to really do, and then kind of work from there. So that's pretty much all I have in a nutshell. Unless you have some more questions for me, Brennan, about the New Beginning Farmers and Ranchers program here in Mississippi. I know we're into our 2nd year. But if you have any questions we may have, I'm happy to answer those questions at this time.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Miles. One thing I'd like you to talk about is a lot of our needs out in the field, and Carrie could probably speak to this as well, is just getting a decent level of training out to the folks on the ground. So can you talk a little bit about how you came up with the idea for your grant and how you thought that process through, like to, you know, getting funded, just how you put your training program together?
Sure, that's a very good question, Brendan. Again, I've been at Alcorn now over 22 years, again, working in the School of Agriculture and Applied Sciences. And I have over 15 years of experience in marketing. And we work with small farmers throughout the entire state of Mississippi. We cover the entire state with the Mississippi Small Farm and Agribusiness Center. So we find when we go out to do our trainings in the areas of marketing, in the areas of farm financial management, dealing with record keeping, which is so critical. And then our small farmers need to know about the different USDA programs that's available to them. So we kind of looked at all those different perspectives of Brennan. We'll be going out and we do needs assessments. We'll be going out to these different trainings and we have evaluations as well. So we was doing a lot of the work anyway, you know, pretty much because we've been working with small farmers and different cooperatives here in Mississippi. So we build our framework around those different needs, looking at those different areas for our farmers. And we also include the food safety. And there's a great need. If you never farmed before, you're a new beginning farmer, you have no clue on what to do. And let me just go ahead and be frank, farming is not easy. It is not easy. It is extremely hard work. So what we did is we tried to start with the basics, just give them information on just the basics on crop and livestock production, how to go into your USDA program offices and get a farm number, just the basic things, and that we walked them through. So that's how we did our program and built our training modules based up on those different areas. Again, marketing, food safety, farm financial management and risk management, USDA programs, and the Farm Bill. So we did that. And then that first year, we had recruiting through our NGOs. They was able to come in and help us recruit these new beginning farmers and ranchers in their prospective areas throughout Mississippi. And so we went to those host sites and we did 5 modules. So we had about 25 to 30 trainings the first year with these 5 NGOs. So each NGO, which we have 5 of them, they was responsible for to do 5 trainings. So that was 25 trainings we did that first year. So it was a lot of hard work, but very rewarding at the same time. And these farmers were so excited. I mean, I have pictures and they come to the training, they have their manual, they're in class early. We start about 9 on a Saturday and we finish around about 3 o'clock on a Saturday, mostly every Saturday. But they was excited about coming in. They wanted to know how to become a new beginning farmers and ranchers. So we've done a pretty good job of that. We couldn't cover everybody. We're still getting applicants now wanting to, how do I apply for new beginning farmers and ranchers program? We are in our 2nd year, almost our 3rd year now. However, we're going to reapply and hope we get funding again because we did not. I mean, I know we reached 500 new beginning farmers in Mississippi. We hadn't even tapped the surface, to be honest with you, Brandon, because we're getting calls now. How can I join the program? But we're moving now. We're into our 2nd year now, into our 3rd year. So we have our cohort 1 and our cohort 2 pretty much now. But we want to, we do still work with farmers. If they can't not get in this particular program, of course, we still provide technical assistance. That's our job. Between the extension program and our center is to provide the technical assistance to farmers that's interested in how to start farming. Yes.
And Elizabeth, and Brandon, that's one of the things I wanted to touch on. Brandy Page was saying she wished she had a program like that near her. And a couple of things, because some of the beginning farmer programs, and again, I know one of the things that I emphasized as I was marketing this program is that for beginning farmers to participate on this 2-day conference, because again, not all beginning farmer and rancher programs are doing face-to-face, especially in COVID-19. So there are some organizations and some of the land grant institutions that are doing their training virtually. They're doing their training through online training. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in person, Brandy. And so it's important to reach out to the groups, especially once these grants are announced. look at the descriptions of each of the grants. I make it a point, anytime USDA makes grants announcement, I look at the summary of the grants, I look at where they're located, and I look at who's the contact person, because you'll be amazed at how many times organizations, and Elizabeth, you could probably attest to this.
Yes.
There are a lot of groups that they get the funding and they're begging farmers to participate. And sometimes they'll even lose their funding because they can't get farmers to participate.
Absolutely, absolutely, Carrie. You're absolutely correct. A lot of funding come down to the small farmer, to the universities, but the farmers do not participate. And then with the COVID-19, I can speak on that, Carrie. A lot of the farmers, to be honest, for year one that we had, we lost them for year two because the COVID-19, and then maybe they did not have access to broadband or internet or Wi-Fi, and they did not have the capability to do the Zoom meetings or do the team meetings that we are offering at Alcorn State University. So it's some challenges there. You know, it's like a catch-22. Some of the farmers have the money and don't take advantage of it. And then some have reasons why they're not taking advantage of it. So we have went completely online this year, year two, Carrie, doing the Zoom meetings for our farmers. We do everything on Thursday night, maybe 2 hours on Thursdays. And we have about 60 to 70 participants participating on those Zoom meetings, trying to do their ag plan. So it's a lot of challenge. Don't think it's just easy work. It's extremely hard work. I mean, it's one thing to write the grant and get the grant, but it's another thing to implement it and get everything done inside of it that you're supposed to be doing. So, but we have a good team. We have a good team working with us. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
And Elizabeth, the other thing that I think you said that I think is so critical too is outside of your beginning farmer and rancher development program is even just as an extension center. So often, especially as a land grant institution, I think we miss that because like in Florida, I'm often sharing with people that FAMU, Florida Agriculture and Mechanical University. Don't forget the agriculture component of it. We want to make sure for, FAMU that we talk about the pharmaceutical, the mechanical, but don't forget the agriculture component of it. There's a rich history of our land grant institutions around agriculture. And so our extension centers are critical as it relates to building the capacity of our farmers and ranchers. And the other thing that I want to go back and echo, Elizabeth, that you shared was the infrastructure component that you discussed. Those farm plans are critical. I think I saw some information, and we're going to talk about it tomorrow when we're talking about DUNS numbers and our SAMS numbers, but the business plan as it relates to the farm number. These are all components that are so critical, whether you're applying for the grant, whether you're the recipient of the grant, or like I continue to say, whether you're the benefactor of the ones that are receiving the benefits of those who receive the grants.
Absolutely.
I want to piggyback on something that both Carrie and Dr. Miles mentioned, and that's just the importance of land grants. I cover 13 Southeastern states and 2 U.S. territories, and I wish we can get a higher level of engagement between the land grants and the farmers that they serve. Some of my work at SARE is designed to that point. But so, for example, this young lady who's in Oklahoma, I don't know where Fort Sill is, but you have Langston, which is 1890 up in Oklahoma. Sometimes our land grants don't know that there's a need for something unless there's some communication. And we have to understand that it's a two-way street, and that if you have an idea for a grant program or for a training program, approach them about it. I'm sure they'll listen to you, and if feasible, we'll try to enact something or to go out and get this grant funding to assist you to do the things that you want. And the other thing is, I think it was Cheryl who mentioned how they went up to DC to talk about the impacts of the grant program that they do. That's something that's very important that we really need to do more of, is letting our voices be heard on how important this money is to our communities, and how important it is to make sure that we're funding our land grant universities at a level where they can help people, and not be too constricted by their budget. So I appreciate you guys bringing up those points. So that's the BFRDP program. They are always looking for reviewers. I'm going to put my email in here because I know the national program director for that program. And when he puts out a call for reviewers, if you're interested, you can just go ahead and shoot me an email and I can make sure your name gets thrown into the mix. Next program is the 2501 program. And Carrie, I'm going to let you take it. Give the overview and let's see who's up 2501. Cindy, I think if Cindy's on. So
Oh, great.
I'll let you take it from here. Explain.
And Brandon, Lorette,
And
Brennan, I think Lorette had to leave, but she emailed me and she wanted me to go back and share that with the value added producers grant, that is open to any producer that's in a rural or an urban area. So it is not restricted to those individuals living in areas that are classified as rural with $50,000 or less. So even though it's administered by the rural development, that particular grant is open to someone that's in an urban area.
Okay.
So I want to make sure that that is made known. So Lorette, make sure she emailed me that.
Okay.
And as we talk about the 2501, so this is one of my favorite programs. And as Brennan said earlier, so what they did, the 2501 now is also part of the Farming Opportunity Training and Outreach program. They call it the photo. So, and if you're not in the, not involved in federal government, one of the things you got to know is that they love acronyms. So we love the alphabet soup. So they call it the photo. So the 2501 program, and as Brandon said, this program is administered by the Office of Advocacy and Outreach, same program that, same department that does the Beginning Farmers program, is targeted to minority and socially disadvantaged farmers. And again, this program is meant to increase awareness of USDA programs. In the last Farm Bill, it was increased. So there is, it's funded up to 3 years, 600,000. Again, very competitive. And in 2019, 15 million. And so what I wanted to do as well, before we invited Cindy to talk, I wanted to go over, because I know there was a question as to what groups are defined as socially disadvantaged. So I wanted to go through that real quick. And a socially disadvantaged group is defined as a farmer or rancher who is a member of one or more of the following groups whose members have been subjected to racial or ethnic prejudice because of their identity as a member of a group without regards to their individual qualities. So that could be African American, American Indians, Alaskan Natives, Asians, Hispanics, and Pacific Islanders. That also includes our veterans. So a veteran farmer or rancher is a person who served in the United States Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, and/or Coast Guard, including the reserve components thereof, and who was discharged or released therefore under conditions other than dishonorable, or who meets the definition of a beginning farmer or rancher. And so to be designated as a veteran farmer or rancher, they must not have operated a farm or ranch, and not have operated a farm or ranch for more than 10 consecutive years. And so again, this is a program where, as a nonprofit, so a nonprofit or a community-based organization can apply, tribal governments and colleges can apply, higher education institutions with agricultural programs, such as the 1890, 1994s, and Hispanic servant institutions, Alaskan Native cooperative colleges can apply. And this year they actually had a separate application for those communities that had persistent poverty areas. And those were areas where they defined persistent poverty as those that had persistent poverty was having 30 years of poverty in those particular communities. And the 2501 is a great program. We've been the recipient of the 2501 program in the past. And again, this is a great program to help beginning farmers to learn about all the various programs that are available out there to help build capacity and to help them be successful. Because we know that USDA, and here's the other thing that I think we should talk about, Brandon, as it relates to the 2501 program. There's no secret that USDA has had a history of discrimination, but they've also gone through and made a very intentional effort to reach out to those individuals that they consider socially disadvantaged, and those individuals that have been considered discriminated against in the past, to figure out ways to be more intentional, to reach out to them and to help them navigate through those various programs and services. And USDA still doesn't always get it right, but that's where organizations such as Wealth Watchers and a lot of the other groups that are out there, I see my colleague John on the call, and it takes organizations to be navigators to help us to get through, to help our farmers to get through these programs. And, you know, I often share with groups that it's not always, we need to be able to separate whether a farmer is being discriminated against or whether or not he just doesn't have all of his paperwork in order. And oftentimes when organizations are funded through the 2501, that's what we can help you to do, is to make sure you meet those thresholds to get your paperwork in order, to make sure you meet all those basic thresholds for all those different programs. Make sure you have your farm number in place. Make sure you have a conservation plan in place. So whether it's Nrcs, whether it's rural development, whether it's FSA, so that when you apply for those different programs, that at least you meet those minimum thresholds. So I'm going to stop right there because I want you to hear from Cindy, who actually was a recent recipient of the 2501 program, and I want us to hear her experience. Cindy?
I don't think she's on with us. I don't know if we lost her, or I thought I saw her earlier, but I don't see her now. So just in the interest of time, Carrie, if you can talk a little bit about your organization.
Right, so I can share about Wealth Watchers. So Wealth Watchers has been a recipient of the 2501 program in the past, and we've applied and haven't received it. And I can tell you that that part is always the frustrating part. Brandon and I are sharing with you what you can do to get the grants, but let me also share with you how frustrating it is when you put in all the work and you miss it by a point or 2 points. One of the important things to do is when you don't get the grant, is always ask for feedback and get it in writing, because oftentimes you'll have 2 different options. They will ask you if you'll want the feedback over the phone, or they'll ask you if you'll want the feedback in writing. You want to make sure you get the feedback in writing, because the following year when you apply, that way you'll have that writing to look at to see what areas you did well on and what areas that you need to improve on. But when you get that 2501 grant, your goal is to go out and help as many farmers as you can. And you want to go out. And so what we did at Wealth Watchers, number one, our goal was to ensure that we could help the farmers be sustainable. And so what we wanted to do was make sure that everyone had their infrastructure in place. And so we really did start with the bare minimum. How many had farm numbers in place? And we also, what that also did too, was we looked at land issues, because ownership issues. That was a big problem. So one of the things, for those of you who are interested in applying for the 2501 grants, the important thing is to make sure to partner, especially partnering with your 1890s. One of Wealth Watchers' strongest partners is FAMU, Florida Agriculture and Mechanical University, Vonda Richardson. I'm not certain if anyone is from FAMU is on the call, but you know, Vonda and I are like Boxy twins, as they used to say, because we work so closely together and have over the years, because we're able to leverage resources and leverage our knowledge. But one of the things we were able to do is to look at, okay, if we're not able to work with our farmers and ensure that they're able to save the land, if we don't have land ownership, that was an issue. So we realized that that was a challenge. And so we were able to address that. The next thing was making sure that all of our farmers and our producers and our landowners met those thresholds. And I'll tell you where that came to be very important is in Florida, as many of you know, we have hurricanes and we have a lot of hurricanes. And so in order to get assistance from USDA during disasters, again, farm numbers are important. SAM numbers are important. DUN numbers are important. You're going to hear Brandon and I talk about those things. So as an organization who was funded for 2501, this is what we're supposed to do. So as farmers and ranchers that are on this particular, that are here now, listen to me. Go to, I don't think, Brandon, I haven't seen the list this year for the 2501 recipients. I'm thinking they're going to put it out within the next week or so. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
So for all of you that are on here, make sure as soon as those list of awardees come out, look to see if they're in your area. And if they're not in your area, like I shared with Brenda earlier, look to see if they're doing anything online. Because again, they're there to build your capacity. They're there to build your capacity. Some of them are doing demonstration projects. So they're looking for farmers to help doing demonstration projects. You know, Wealth Watchers right now, we don't have a 2501 grant, but we have an NRCS grant, and we're working with some of our producers in Florida and in Georgia, and we're doing demonstration projects that is, you know, benefiting our producers. So no matter what projects that you're trying to do on your farm, there's organizations like Wealth Watchers that's being funded that can possibly help you with that. They're building capacity. And I'm not certain if Career Hawkins, that's one of our farmers in, she's in Baker County, but we're working with her on a soil management project. So as a 2501 recipient, again, our goal is to build the capacity of those farmers. But it's important that as a 2501 recipient, that you partner, that you include those letters of support with your grant application. That's huge. And I know we're going to talk about that more probably tomorrow, Brandon. But you know, letters of support, it's not enough for you to write in your grant that you have that support. The reviewers want to see those letters of support. It's not enough to just tell that compelling story. They want to see the data. So you've got to include that data, and that data needs to be specific to your area. Go out and talk to the farmers. Even though you may think you know what those farmers' needs are, you need to go out and you need to talk to them and see what their needs are. And also think ahead. A lot of our farmers were not able to participate in the Food in the Box program. And Brandon, this was interesting as I was talking with a lot of those producers, and you know, billions of dollars have gone out, and especially a lot of our small farmers, because they didn't have GAP. They didn't have GAP certification.
Yeah.
And so because they didn't have GAP certification, they could not participate in the farm to box programs. So those are the type of things that as 2501 recipients, we need to be helping our farmers with.
Yeah, yeah. And Carrie, I stand corrected. They did release the, James Ford just put the link, and I now that I see it, I do remember looking at this, but they did release the 25.
Now this is the 2019. Have they did the 2020? Because I haven't seen 2020.
I don't know. I don't know if they're that far behind in the approval part.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen 2020.
Yes. The 2020 has been released.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, Carrie. So those of you, I think James put there's a link to the projects that were last released, but I remember seeing this like coming across my email just not too long ago. So, but you'll get an idea of what type of programs and projects that 2501 funds. So thank you, Carrie.
I want to add to that. I don't have my information that's available right now, but they're having a 2501 session here in the near future regarding, I guess, 2501. So I don't have my information available, but I got that notification, and I'll provide it to you when I can find it.
And what is that? A training?
It's just a session for, I guess, to discuss issues with the 2501.
Okay.
I'll get it to you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, James.
Brennan,
Okay, moving right along. The next.
Brennan, I think somebody else had a question.
Oh, someone. Yes, we are going to share the slideshow. And let me see. Does the 25 only apply to nonprofits as for-profit? That's probably a better question for you, Carrie. Can for-profit entities apply for 2501?
I don't think so. And according to this, and I just put a fact sheet in the chat box.
Okay.
And so it's community-based and nonprofit organizations.
Okay.
So I think you have to be a 501c3
Okay,
or a college. But I
okay,
did just put the fact sheet in the chat box.
okay, okay.
This is James Ford again. I guess the important thing is to look at the qualifications once you get the 2501 RFP, and that may be an opportunity for for-profit organization if they're engaged in education. But just check with your RFP to make sure that you're qualified.
Yeah, and it could be a case where they can't probably be a project lead, because they could certainly be a partner. So, okay, so that's 2501. Thank you, Carrie. Next program we're going to talk about is the Southern Sustainable Agriculture. Oh, I forgot my research and education program, also known as Southern SARE. Now, I know there may be some of you on this call who are outside of Southern SARE's region. We cover 13 southeastern states, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. However, if you go to SARE.org, SARE is funded by NIFA, which is an agency of the USDA. And NIFA, so SARE is funded by the USDA, but we are not a USDA agency. What is done is the funding for the program is taken and given to land-grant universities in each of the 4 regions. So we have a southern region, we have a northeastern region, we have a north central region, which is the Midwest, and we have a western region. And there's a land-grant university that is basically the administrator for that program within whatever region you're in. So it's University of Georgia in the south. I believe it's the University of Utah out west. It is the University of Minnesota in the north central region. And I think it's the University of New Hampshire for the Northeast. I'm going to be directing my comments mainly about the southern region, but just know that if you're outside of that region, of our region, there is a SARE program that covers you. So we're primarily a grants making organization. We fund research and education grants across 13 southeastern states, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands. We have right around 7 grant programs with funding levels ranging from $15,000 to over $1 million. These are once again competitive grant programs. And we have one of the few programs where individual farmers and ranchers can apply for funding, as well as universities, nonprofit organizations, and local governments. So here are our programs. We have a program which is going to close in a little while called the Producer Grant Program. And that funds any producer, any research that allows funding for any farmer to do his own self-directed research on his farm. So I got involved with the SARE program back in 2008, 2009, or something like that, because I wanted to know why we couldn't grow European melons here in the South. You only see watermelons and cantaloupes down here. Somebody told me about the SARE program. I had never written a grant before, and I got $9,500 to do a test trial. So producers, we've recently increased the funding for that program up to $15,000. We have our on-farm research grant, which is basically the same thing as the producer grant with one important distinction. Instead of the farmer heading up the research, it is someone like Extension. So that would be, for example, Dr. Miles coming in and leading a research project on your farm. We have graduate student grants. So if any of you out there are graduate students and you want to do your own research around sustainable agriculture, you can do it. For those of you who run nonprofits out there, we have our professional development program, which is our train-the-trainer program. That provides funding to provide education to people who work with farmers. So for example, Carrie could apply to this program she had mentioned GAP. She could apply for this program to get funding to do GAP education for nonprofits that work with farmers. And you can get up to $80,000 to do that type of work. Then we have our research and education grants, which are our flagship grants. actually two grants within this program. One is our R&E, which provides funding for doing some specific research, studying a specific research question, and then doing some education around that. Adds up to $400,000 now for up to a 3-year program. Within that R&E program, there's also an education grant. And for those of you who run nonprofits out there, organizations like that who work with farmers, that provides you with up to $50,000 to put together direct farmer training programs that you can do on the farm. And we also have, so our producer grant I told you about, here's some examples. A young lady in the Virgin Islands. The Virgin Islands the farmers there do a lot with value-added products, and she makes a lot of medical tinctures and a lot of medical concoctions. And so she was just awarded last year a grant to study 3 different varieties of basil and seeing which one has the best medicinal purposes that she's looking for. In Tennessee, a young lady got some funding to do variety trials of indigo, which was the original dye used for fabrics and blue jeans before they went to chemical dyes. But she got some money to do variety trials on the indigo, and also to work with tobacco farmers to develop markets for them and a more fiscally friendly financial situation for them, as opposed to being caught up in the commodity cycles, it's boom or bust depending on what the market does with commodities. Funding's up to $15,000 for up to a 2-year project. The calls for a proposal, excuse me, are typically reached in September, and there's no matching funds required. We don't have a match. And we'll talk about how you actually apply for these things tomorrow, but Southern SARE has its own standalone application process, which we don't go through the grants.gov, which we'll talk about tomorrow. We have our own online application system. So to talk a little bit about just the producer program, we have Patrick Johnson on the line, who's a farmer out of Virginia who got a SARE producer grant. So thank you for joining us today, Patrick. And how you doing, man? Patrick? I see him on the line. Unmute him. All right, he must have stepped away from his phone. So we'll go to the R&E and then we'll come back to Patrick. So the research and education, as I explained, is designed to fund research and education projects throughout the Southeast. R&E funds projects that study a particular research question. And some of the projects we've funded projects on parasite prevention and small ruminants, such as sheep and goats. Southern SARE has funded most of the research around small ruminants in the Southeast, especially in conjunction with our 1890s. And we've just awarded a $1 million grant to a consortium of 1890 universities to do some work around meat goats. And also within this, we have an education grant that funds direct farmer education projects. And one of the very first recipients of our education grants, so only about 3 years old, was to Macintosh seed. So I like to have John Littles and Cheryl Peterson talk a little bit about the work that they've done, what their grant did, and why they applied for this money and what exactly they did with it once they were awarded the funds. So thanks for being with us today, guys.
Well,
Thank you, Brendan.
Yeah, so thanks for having us. Hello again, everyone. My name is John Littles. I'm the Executive Director of Macintosh Seed Sustainable Environment Economic Development. We're located in Southeast Georgia, Darien, Georgia. We serve states of Georgia, Mississippi, and Florida and Alabama as a part of our work. region. And again, we were awarded this grant over 2 years ago. And I think thanks to Brennan bringing it to our attention, and I think also sharing with him some of the issues that we had experienced in those areas, in rural areas, throughout working with our small farmers and some of the challenges and that they were facing during that time through our outreach methods and working with farmers. And so we applied and was successful in getting that grant, which allowed us to work more closely and more direct with farmers in these areas, doing a lot of outreach, getting them resources through NRCS programs, hosting NRCS meetings and outreach meetings, getting farmers a lot more educated, building partnerships, local partnerships, and local with local NRCS offices as well. And so that helped. Many of these farmers had not experienced or were unaware of these NRCS resources such as eQuip. We encouraged them to start out by getting their farm numbers if they didn't have it. And then we moved from there to getting them to apply for eQuip for certain conservation practices. And then also looking at some were able to get CSPs, management plans, various level of farmers, depending on where they were, if they were trying to enter into the market. We did one-on-one assessment with many farmers as to where they were, what they needed to get into the market, analyzing their current potential markets that they were into and what product they were doing. We were able to take a look at shifting from into demand from supply to demand, sorry. Yeah, so many farmers are just looking at supplying, and we came up with an approach to look at what was in demand instead of just growing various products and crops and maybe not having sales. We took the approach of identifying markets and market demands, and we were able to connect many farmers with buyers and wholesale buyers, school districts, to create a demand for their product, and then shifting as to how they grow, and then also growing together as maybe a network or as individual farmers to meet a market demand. So I'll stop right there and let Cheryl add on.
Yes, hi everyone. As John said, as we were doing our work with doing outreach to farmers, we started noticing a lot of commonality amongst the farmers. And one of the things that we noticed is that their capacity needed to be built. We wanted to make their farms be more profitable. And in order for that to happen, they needed to expand their market base. So as we started looking at the demand for crops that were available and what the market was demanding, we found out that farmers didn't have the required certifications needed that were necessary in order for them to participate in those markets or to grow for larger scale vendors. And so that's when we approached Brennan and had the conversation about just the educational needs of the farmers that we were encountering. And so we applied for the education grant. So we utilized that grant to help build the capacity of farmers. And so we scheduled workshops for farmers around best practices, around growing protocols. If they had hoop houses or were eligible to get funding for hoop houses, we talked about what is the best way to grow in a hoop house, how to grow year round. We talked about GAP certification, GHP, conducted mock audits so that farmers could get ready for their GAP audits in order for them to get certified. We also brought in NRCS agents district conservationists so that they could conduct classes for the farmers, and also talk to them about eligibility requirements for programs that are offered through Nrcs. And so we work to build the capacity of the farmers by utilizing educational workshops, utilizing peer-to-peer opportunities, having farmer-to-farmer exchanges. So we had farmers in Mississippi who we brought to Georgia, so that they had an opportunity to see a processing facility. They had an opportunity to ask questions about how do you acquire the equipment, how do you manage a processing facility, because everybody wants a processing facility, everybody wants their refrigerated trucks. And so we felt that it was very important for farmers to be able to talk to other farmers so that they could find out best practices, so that they could find out the challenges that come with owning a fleet of refrigerated trucks or owning a processing facility and trying to manage that facility. And we had peer-to-peer learning exchanges that talked about everything from who's going to be the person who's going to manage that facility, who's turning the lights off at the end of the day, who's managing the distribution and the aggregation. And so we decided that educational classes and peer-to-peer learning were going to be beneficial for those farmers so that they could hear firsthand about the successes, but also about the challenges that they would encounter with owning their own processing facility. And so it was really important that if they were going to go after these larger markets, that they work together, that they implement best practices for growing. And so we had sessions on growing protocols. What does it mean if you have farmers participating in a co-op and you have to grow to spec? What does spec mean? And moving farmers away from, again, growing for supply to now trying to meet a market demand and understanding the demands that come along with entering into that market, growing for vendors who have specs that they have to abide by. And so we had conversations in sessions with having someone who was going to be in charge of quality control, and what does it mean to have someone who does quality control, and having those tough conversations with farmers and helping them to understand that traditionally you may have always grown, but now that you're growing for specs, there are certain criteria that your produce has to meet in order for it to be picked up or be purchased by a vendor. And so we had classes on that, food safety training for farmers and for cooperatives. And so all of it was designed to increase the market demand, making those farms more profitable, but then also supplying those farmers with the needed resources that they needed to expand their farming operations, to help them understand what the demands are for local markets, regional markets. If they were going to do farm to school, they needed to have that conversation about what is the criteria for farm to school if you're going to enter into that market. So our educational grant from SARE provided us with the needed resources and support to support those farmers. And so farmers got farm and track numbers, farmers applied for EQIP, for CSP, farmers attended educational classes, farmers were provided with funding support so that they could attend the peer-to-peer learning journeys, so that they would have those opportunities to interact with veteran farmers, more seasoned farmers, and those farmers who could share best practices with them. We also included an element where we involved the youth. There were some farmers, some young farmers who had inherited some property. And so we wanted to ensure that they were able to participate as well. And so they were brought into this whole chain of GAP certification so that they could understand the criteria and the demands of, if you're going to sell to wholesale buyers, this is what you need to be able to meet. This is a certification that's required to set those young farmers up for future opportunities to participate in bigger markets. John?
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think just one success story, one of our farmers was growing collard greens, and in order to get into the school district, he needed to have value-added cut collard greens. And for maybe 3 or 4 years, he's been trying to get a cutting chopper or greens cutter. And I think originally in the States, it was like maybe over $19,000, $20,000 purchase it, and that's been his barrier from being able to expand, his produce and his sales. And so we were able to connect with him with the overseas producer of this machine, and we went through all the specs, and we were able to get that for, I think, about $4,000. So
Oh, wow.
$15,000 less. And so we were hand in hand, walked him through every process, all the paperwork, which we pretty much helped or pretty much did with his support. And then we were also able to leverage in this project to get some additional resources to be able to purchase that for him. And so as an organization, we were able to purchase that machine for him. And now he's into three different school districts,
Oh, wow.
selling into grocery stores with that product, greens. And so that was one of the success coming out of that, helping and working one-on-one directly to help expand that farmer's market and meeting the demand.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I see Patrick's back with us. Before we move back to the producer grant, one thing I want to ask you guys, I always tell people, especially when they're doing these grant programs, to take a little money to try and get bigger money. And I know that you guys have applied for one of our R&E grants, which I believe you've been invited back to submit a full proposal. But the idea for what you guys, if you just want to speak about what you guys are trying to do with this next potential larger grant and how that came out of your education grant. So this is the whole thing that you guys are doing with technology.
Yeah, so I'll start and let Cheryl finish.
Hey,
I think just building upon our social capital, our experience, our partnerships, our relationships that we've had from with our farmers, and understanding, getting them to another level and the next level, assessing that they are currently have many gaps around technology and access to technology, and then the resources, which a lot of USDA and their resources are now going through technology, and our farmers are maybe not be equipped as well as that. And so we're trying to look at a project to help identify the gaps in that, whether it can enhance their farm business, or does it impede their farm business. And so that's the objective of that proposed project.
Okay.
so what we found, and just as you all have talked about today, COVID-19 really has highlighted the need for our farmers to have an increase in their technology capacity. As we have been working with farmers, we realize that their technological skills run the gamut from little to non-existent to those who are more advanced. But when opportunities become available that are only available to farmers if they have access to broadband, if they know how to utilize certain apps, if they can go online, there is a big gap in the knowledge base with our farmers. And so we started looking beneath the surface to say that on the surface, it looks like, oh, they just don't know how to use technology. But their lack of technology skills, their lack in capacity to be able to access the resources that are available really impacts their farms in a greater way. And so we're looking a little bit deeper than just on the surface level about how this gap in technology is going to be either an impediment for farmers, or it can enhance their farm operations. And so that's what we're trying to figure out. Those farmers who are utilizing technology right now are far more advanced. So when the stimulus money came out, there were a lot of farmers who were not able to take advantage of the money that was available because you had to fill a lot of the paperwork out online. And so a lot of farmers became frustrated and just didn't apply for the funding that was available. So we don't want that to happen again. We wanted to be a case where it is their option. If they decide to apply, that's fine, but we don't want the lack of technology capacity to be the main reason why our farmers in particular, farmers of color, are missing out on opportunities that are available to them. And it's because of their lack of technology capacity that they're not able to access these resources. And as more and more programs are moving toward online resources, even just like with Zoom, a lot of farmers weren't comfortable using Zoom, could not access Zoom. As more and more of the way that we do business or what's becoming the norm requires that they have some technology capacity, we just wanted to take a look and find out just what sort of impact is this going to have on farmers for years to come. So
well, I hope you guys get funded. Good luck.
we hope so too.
Very worthwhile project. Okay, Patrick's back with us. And we're going to talk about the producer grant. So just to refresh everybody's memory, it's designed to fund Pharma and Rancho-led projects on their own farms. And I gave you some examples of the types of projects that we funded over the years. If you look at our website, it says for up to a 2-year project. I don't think we're doing a 1-year option anymore. So you get up to $15,000 for a project that lasts no longer than 2 years. And so Patrick was able to get successfully apply for one of our producer grants. So Patrick's a certified permaculturist out of Virginia and also a farmer. So Patrick, tell us a little bit about your project, your farm, and what you do, and what your SHARE project was about. Got to unmute. You have to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, good.
Thank you, Brendan. Again, my name is Patrick Johnson. I'm a farmer in Virginia, in the Richmond region. My farm is near Richmond International Airport. As you said, I am a permaculturalist, and for those of you not familiar with permaculture, it's a little bit beyond organic agriculture in that we try to basically mimic what nature does in our agricultural practices. So basically, I became interested in this in weed suppression. Now, as a natural or organic farmer, you're very limited in terms of what you could do in terms of dealing with weeds. Most of us probably, if we do grow some, I grow vegetables and fruits primarily, and I produce some value-added products as well. But so if you grow fruits and vegetables, obviously the biggest challenge that you're probably going to have is with weeds. Weeds has been said to take up at least 40% of your production budget. So, and that's mostly with time and labor of dealing with weeds. And you're very restricted as an organic or natural grower in terms of what you can use in terms of like chemical, like people who are traditional farmers, conventional farmers, they can use different types of chemicals. So you're, as a natural or organic farmer, you're very limited in what you can do in terms of that type of weed suppression. So I became interested in this question of how can I deal with weeds as a small natural or organic farmer without using any types of chemical to control the weeds. So you have some options. You do have some options. One of the options is to use mulch, and so there are different types of mulch, obviously. But I decided that I wanted to use wood chip mulch because one of the things that if you study permaculture or organic farming, there's this method called back to Eden farming, where this gentleman has developed a system of just using wood chips to provide his fertilization as well as water retention and weed control. So I've been very interested in that for a number of years, and I wanted to put that to the test and see if it actually was successful in controlling weeds as well as helping to control water retention as well as providing nutrients for your plants as the wood chips broke down over time. So Southern SARE funded me in 2018 to do that project, to do a study. I partnered with Virginia State University. I actually teach part of the urban ag class there with the lead person is Dr. Leonard Gadenji. He's a friend of mine and a colleague who I help teach his class with the permaculture section of that class. So we partnered together and then did a research project. I wrote the grant and it got funded, and we looked at how effective wood chips were in controlling weeds over the course of the growing season. And what we found was that wood chips are very effective in controlling weeds. You have to make sure that you use them at the right level. I found that a 4-inch application of hardwood wood chips works best in terms of controlling weeds. And we use hardwood wood chips. And also it's very effective in controlling water retention. So a lot of us who are, especially as we are beginning farmers and getting into agriculture, we don't have access to and resources to buy drip irrigation, which is the predominant way that commercial vegetable producers do irrigation. So if you use wood chips, you may be able to eliminate that cost, because the wood chips help you retain the water. And as they break down, they are also very effective in terms of providing nutrients to your plants as they break down. So they also can, to some degree, eliminate cover cropping. So you got all those benefits that come out of using wood chips, and those benefits have been verified by me by being able to participate in this SARE program.
Patrick, if you don't mind asking, how much was your grant for?
The total amount of my grant it's around $8,000, and
Okay.
I will say this. So the SARE provided me with $8,000, and I came out of my pocket a little bit, so all the costs were not covered. I covered some of the costs for the project.
Okay.
Primarily, I did a little bit more traveling than probably that were really covered by the grant, but most of everything else was covered. And so if you do one of these grants, you do have to realize that you may just a little bit come out of your pocket, a little bit. And so I don't mind that, because it was something that was very educational and beneficial to me, as I was able to go to a number of conferences as a result of doing the grant.
Yeah, I know you spoke at a Hispanic conference a couple of years ago. So thank you very much. So for all you producers and farmers who tinker, and don't let the word research scare you, because we're all researchers if we're trying to look for solutions to the problems on our farm. So the one other thing, we'll cover this again tomorrow, is that SARE is what we call Pharma focused, and you'll find out a lot of these grants really want to see that you have input from farmers, that whatever ideas you're considering originated out of conversations with farmers, and that farmers are involved in your project. So just keep that in mind. SARE is for example, is very picky about making sure that if you're involving farmers in your project, that you pay them. We don't like to see farmers getting involved in projects and not being compensated for it, unless that's what they want, if they're donating their time. So thank you, Patrick. Appreciate it. All right, moving right along, we're at our last topic for today. And this is NRCS, the National Resource Conservation Service. This is actually not a grant program, but so many people think it is, and it's so important to small and medium-sized farms that I thought that we would go ahead and include it. And it's more what they call a cost share program. And we have someone online who's going to be talking about it. But Carrie, I know you've worked with farmers on NRCS, so you want to explain a little bit about the program, and then we'll have James talk about it.
Absolutely. And this is probably one of my favorite. Okay, I know I said the 2501 was my favorite program, but NRCS is probably one of my favorite programs. And I think it's important to note too that although we're saying USDA, just like we said, rural development. But one of the things that I think that people don't realize about NRCS is that you can be in a rural or urban area and benefit from NRCS program. Two basic things. So with Wealth Watchers, when we work with farmers, the very first thing, there's two things that we think are critical for every farmer to have. Number one is a farm number. Every farmer, no matter whether you just have a backyard garden or whether you have 1,000 acres, you need to have a farm number, because you cannot do business with USDA without a farm number. So you need to have a farm number. You get that farm number through FSA, Farm Service Agency. The second thing that you should have is a conservation plan. And again, I go back to Elizabeth, your conservation plan is really a part of your farm business plan or your ranch business plan, but your conservation plan is something that you're going to get as you're working with your with NRCS. And through the EQIP program, and James, I'm not going to steal his thunder, but one of the things that I would share with you that Wealth Watchers did, and we discovered this through our 2501 grant, is that as a socially disadvantaged farmer, when with the cost share program, the socially disadvantaged farmer was able to get an advance, but even in certain cases, that wasn't enough money in order to get the practice done up front. And once you get those contracts, farmers and producers, you have to spend it. You have to get that practice done. So Brandon, one of the things that Wealth Watchers was able to do, we became an RMAP lender. And that's a rural micro entrepreneur assistance program. And so we were able, by becoming an RMAP lender, we were able to work with our farmers and producers, and we were able to make them a loan to make sure that they were able to get their practice done. And then we did a double pay assignment. So that's why it's so critical to work with your nonprofit organizations that are working in your area, so that it's a partnership. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to James Ford.
You're on mute, James.
James, you're on mute.
Okay. Yes. As I said, I'm James Ford. First of all, I pride myself in being a fourth generation farmer. We are still in the farming business, or we have our land operating as a farm. This coming year, I hope to be a pecan grower, and I can get back and put my hands back in the soil. I'm also retired from the Natural Resources Conservation Service, did 38 years with Nrcs. My last destination was a state conservationist for Tennessee. My wife and I formed a company. It's a for-profit company called Square O Consulting LLC. And we said we help farmers build wealth through utilizing agriculture and natural resources. The Natural Resources Conservation Service is one of the 3 service delivery agencies, and they adopted several years ago about helping the people help the land. So if they have technical and financial assistance to help the people, then the people can help the land. This COVID-19 has brought about a lot of changes within NRCS and also within USDA. We are not able to visit the field offices, as Cheryl mentioned earlier about the technology part of it. Some of the field offices are still open. The EQIP program, which is the flagship part of USDA program, US NRCS program, which provide both technical and financial assistance. And someone mentioned earlier about all the acronyms about NRCS, EQIP, and all these kinds of things. We developed a little booklet some time ago to help you navigate through some of these acronyms. But the EQIP program is the flagship program with NRCS, and a lot of times they advertise that 90% cost share, 90% financial assistance. And that sounds enticing a lot of times for people, but sometimes that 90% could end up being 80%. Sometimes that 90% could end up being 100% based on you getting the practices at a certain cost. You mentioned the conservation plans, farm and track numbers. Sometimes, I don't say it's difficult, but sometimes if you want a conservation plan, it may be a little difficult getting a conservation plan. And the thing to keep important, be important about a conservation plan, it's not what the agent wants, it's what you need. And in order for you to get that, you need to know something about NRCS, something about the program they have, something about the practices they have. Many times you may go out and say, well, I want one practice. I want a hoop house. I want irrigation. If you just want a single practice, that does not help you in terms of being eligible for some of the cost share programs. So it's important to get a conservation plan to identify everything that you can find on that farm that you need to do. But if you are a new farmer or you are not familiar with NRCS, you may not know. You can go on NRCS website and find a lot of information. But one of the most important pieces of information in that is the cost share list, the cost share list. And if you go to that cost share list, there may be 200 or 300 practices on there, but it's important to you to find out which one of those practices that's available to you. I have been working with some people. We're trying to develop a shortcut, if you will, to find out those practices that are available to you and the cost share rate. So those are kinds of things you need to, I guess, look at those. What we do is work with individual landowners, trying to get them into USDA programs, get them the farm and track number, get them to sign up for the conservation plan, and then just kind of promote them for doing things. Sometimes people start and so old man back home used to use the terms that people are co, but they won't operate. So we have to make them co and operate. So we need to sometimes push people, because you talk about new and beginning farmers, we put them into farming business or whatever, and there's a lot of things that they can take advantage of, but they may not have the knowledge or the skills to ask for what they need. But in RCS, they have a lot of programs available. Brandon, I wanted to talk a little bit about some grants that's available from NRCS. Mm-hmm. And please. One of them is what's called CIG. That's another acronym, Conservation Innovation Grant. Now, that only means that if you have an idea that you want to institute on your farm, an idea that may not be available in any of the conservation practices, if you want to present that or apply for that particular grant, you can do so. But you have to, like I said, have to be innovative. And this particular grant is a 50-50 match. So if you're going for $200,000, you got to come up with $100,000 match or in kind. But fortunately, a few days ago, they lifted the restriction on that 50% match. Now, it may go down for limited resource farms, it may go down to 25% match. So what I'm encouraging you to do is to find something that you always wanted to do. You know it's a good idea. You know it'll help your farm, but I don't have any money for it. I know it'll work. So that key part in that is innovation, innovative grant. Find something that's innovative. And that's one of the things that I guess you probably, like when I say get your foot in the door, start doing those kinds of things. The other one is a regional conservation partnership, and it's called Rcpp. That particular grant normally covers a large watershed to help to kind of expand some of the things that's going on. And these particular grants are normally given to entities like the Soil and Water Conservation District, Water Management Districts, and these kinds of things. And it's big money in that. And a lot of times small farmers can't participate in it because it's such a big program. that particular program in the new Farm Bill allows for limited resource farmers to be a part of that Rcpp. Now they issue some RFPs for those, so just have to be on the lookout. Make sure if you are maybe a farmer, a nonprofit, I know the nonprofits are available. Make sure you have grants.gov. Make sure you're on grants.gov when you know when these grants are available. Nrcs may also have some regional type grants, and one of the things that people see a grant sometime, more than nonprofits, oh, I want to apply for that grant. I think you need to know something about NRCS before you start. Know a little something about it. You got field officers, know about the structure of NRCS, you know, what are some of the program managers. And if you want to apply, or should want to apply for some of these grants, make sure you get in contact with some of your program managers. Now, there are some regional grants, there are some national grants, there are some grants from the state. So if you on grants.gov, if you see some of these grants, look at them, make sure you have the capability of doing those things. And a lot of those things are technical. And if you don't have the technical capability and you are a person who administers grants, it's always good to have some partners. There are some people out there who have the technical capability. They may be certified in the technical service provider, which is called TSP. You may do the administrative head of that, but they may be able to do the technical part of that. So make sure you try to partner with those kind of people. The other thing somebody mentioned was a lot of these grants now, they are looking for partnerships. So we need to keep in mind that you can partner with somebody that may have some capability that you have and help you with that. Brandon, I want to talk a little bit more about some grants, a little bit, if you will. A lot of times people see these grants, and I've heard them talk to me all the time. I'm gonna get me a grant writer. I'm gonna get a grant writer. Well, you know, that's fine and dandy, and I'm not gonna knock grant writers, but you have to have the knowledge and skills to know what you want to do and what they want in that particular grant. A grant writer may be a person to put some things in context for you, but you need to know exactly what is needed in that particular grant. Another thing with some of the grants, they sometimes have some deliverables, and people sometimes be too ambitious about the deliverables, and they get too many deliverables, or the deliverables are kind of complex and they can't achieve these deliverables. So it's important to have some deliverables that you can achieve. And NRCS or any other agency, when they issue an RFP, it's something that they need the services for. And hopefully it's something that you need the service for your clients. So it's important that both of those things match. I've also seen where people see this is a grant. I think I can use this. You know, they read it and read all the details in it, and it starts sounding like it got your name on it. You know, but you have to do a lot of research. And one thing I found out that in terms of some of the outreach and educational grants, you have to do some research on demographics to make sure that you have the kind of people in your service area that you can service, and they have that need for that particular service. Brennan, I just wanted to, you know, sometimes when you're last on the program, a lot of things they've already covered in some manner. I had a few notes here.
While you're at James, you know, when I first got involved with NRCS, I remember conservationists talk about practices. It, you know, wasn't after I got involved with the agency that I truly understand what that meant. So those of you on the call now, you see a picture of a high tunnel that was funded through NRCS. So can you talk a little bit about what practices are out there for folks, some of the stuff that they can be looking at for their farms?
Yes, and okay, there's a I saw something the other day, there are over 500 different practices,
Mhm.
but you want to match the practice with your farming operation. If you are a row crop farmer, you want to look for, maybe it's the basic thing, you want to look for some terraces that may be a kind of antiquated. You want to look for cover crops. You want to look for pest management. You want to look for pollinators. Now, pollinators is a good practice to have. And if you are a beef cattle farmer, you want to look for a well. You want to look for a heavy use area. You want to look for rotational grazing. You want to look for pest management. If you're growing woodland, you want to look for fire breaks. You want to look for practices that will help for thinning. And as I mentioned earlier, if you go to that cost share sheet, you can find all the practices that will equate to what your particular interest is. If you're a vegetable producer, you say, I want a well. You need irrigation. You want to maybe have cover crops. You maybe want to have pollinators. There's a suite of practices. If you're growing any particular commodity, try to make sure you have all the complementary practices that you want to put in. So just one practice is not enough to have. You need to have complementary practices. And Brandon, I can't enumerate all of them, but basically, if you get a conservation plan, you have some woodland, you have some cropland, you have some pasture land. You have, you want to make sure you don't just say, I'm interested in my cropland, but don't forget the pasture land. And one of the most things that people forget is woodland. Woodland. They forget it's woodland and forestry practices. They forget about those because it's a long-term return on that. But if you get involved with Nrcs, you may be able to get some practices to get some return from that. A lot of small farmers, they have woodland, don't have enough to produce enough woodland, but what about silvopasture? Go in there and thin the trees out and put cattle in there, put goats in there, all these kinds. And then once you put the goats in, you may need some water facilities. So the important thing is take advantage of everything that's possible and not concentrate on just one individual practice. If that's the message that I want to leave today, is that if you deal with Nrcs and you know you just need one practice, you know you need a hoop house, you may need a well, you may need irrigation, you may need pollinators, all those things to go with it. And that will help to enhance another practice that's called conservation stewardship program. If you do all those things and you're a good steward, you do all the practices that you need, the conservation stewardship program will reward you with money in your pocket for doing these kinds of things. And I want to, one of the things, another one of my soapbox is I put a little message up there about the farm bill. Sometimes we wait and see what's in the farm bill. What's in the farm bill for us? What's in the farm bill for us? It's important for us to, as a group of people, to start having some input into the farm bill. The kinds of things that's needed in the farm bill. And the reason I want to come out, one of my soapboxes, is that sometimes we just get the programs that come down from the farm bill, but we need to be involved on the policy end of it. The policy center down at Alcorn is one way to get involved in that. You can also get involved by being a member of your Farm Bureau, the Cattlemen's Association, the Cotton Council, the peanut, those kinds of things, the vegetable growers, or whatever you're growing, the Forestry Commission, whatever that may be. That's how you can get involved. And when you get involved, you can see some of these things come out on the other end in the Farm Bill. And just don't wait and say, what's in it for us at Farm Bill? So I don't know if I'm getting off, but we got to be not only just, I'm not preaching here, not doers of the word, but sayers of the word or something like that. But we got to get in on the front end to get something on the back end of it. Now, it may be a long process, but as a small farmers, we need to have our own advocacy group for doing those kinds of things. Now, Brandon, I don't know if I got off my topic or not, but that's my sermon for today.
No, that was good. That was good. Thank you, James. So just to give anybody an idea of what NRCS can help you with, this year we got approved for a Another hoop house, which I put a picture on this slide. We got approved for drip irrigation. We got approved for a well. We got approved for a rainwater harvesting system. We got approved for soil testing. And we also got approved to do some pollination work. So there's stuff out there that I know some young men who in Atlanta was actually going out and spending their own money to build things like hoop houses, had no idea who Nrcs was and how they can engage with the program. So thank you, James.
Yeah, another thing about EQIP, okay, you apply for EQIP, you may be a year or so before you can be able to qualify. But when you apply for the EQIP, again, don't apply for one practice, apply for several practices. Now, the other thing about it, we've had some issues, I said some issues that the NRCS staff are either they're kind of behind on the workload, and it may be a time before they can get out and provide you some technical assistance, especially on irrigation and those real technical practices. So you have to be patient on some of this. And I've had people say, well, I didn't get approved this year. Make sure you go back in and make sure they reapply you for the next year. EQIP is an open application. You can apply at any time. Don't wait till a particular time to apply. Go in and apply at any time. And always check to see the status of your application.
And you know, Brandon and Mr. Ford,
Yes.
if I can add to that, and if you're not approved, again, it's the same thing that we say to organizations. If you don't get approved for the grant, ask for feedback. But if you're a producer and if you applied for EQIP and you weren't approved, ask for feedback. Because some mistakes do happen.
Well,
we had a situation here where a mistake happened. One of our ranchers. I'm going to also ask, if you're not talking, could you mute your line for everyone else? You guys have done so good throughout the whole presentation. So if you're not talking, if you can mute your line. But we had a situation where one of our ranchers, who was not only socially disadvantaged, but he was also a veteran and he had a conservation plan. All of these allow him to have extra points, and he didn't get awarded. And initially he became frustrated, and he came back to us because we assisted him, and it was just a simple phone call, and we worked through it, and he was able to get all the practices he applied for, Mr. Ford, like you said, because he applied for several. So again, if you don't get approved, don't just get frustrated and walk away. Dig a little deeper, find out why. And I would also say, for all of the nonprofits that are on the phone, and for all of our higher institutions, it is critical for us to have a partnership with USDA. Because oftentimes the two of us working together can benefit our farmers and producers, because we have to work collaboratively together, because we both want the same thing, and that's for our producers and our ranchers and our farmers to be successful. So we've got to be on the same page. And so for me, in my footprint, my USDA colleagues they're just that, my colleagues that I can pick up a phone, and if there is an issue, we can get it resolved, and we don't have to threaten lawsuits or any of that stuff. We can just get it resolved, and in the end, our farmers, our ranchers, and our producers win.
Brandon, if I may, one other couple of points I didn't cover. In this whole process of EQIP and USD NRCS, two key components of that is the local work group and the state technical committee. They are the ones who decide what practices will be available in a county and how much money will be there. You can be a part of that local work group. Call your district conservationist and find out when that work group is going to meet. The other thing is the FSA County Committee. FSA County Committee is, you can get on the FSA County Committee by a ballot. They issue at some point in time, they issue for someone who serve on that FSA County Committee. That's where the decisions are made locally. Now, you can easily, I say easily, if you wanted to be on that kind of committee, it's just like politics. You apply to be on it, then you go around in politics, you get votes. The votes are based on people who are FSA, who are on the FSA, not board, but you're a farmer. If you're a farmer, you can vote. There's another entity called the Soil and Water Conservation Districts. They are a political entity that have some impact on conservation program. In most jurisdictions, one of those members are appointed by the governor and the other one is elected. And that's a position that you can, if you wanted to be a district supervisor, in most places, you can be one if you just do a little politicking. I've seen where a district supervisor is on the ballot, they'll put it in the paper. Sometimes they don't get 5 votes. And if you really want to be a district supervisor, you can do a little politicking and people can vote for you on the general ballot. Most of the time, you don't even see it in the paper. You don't know about it. Next thing you know, you got a district supervisor. Well, I didn't know it. So these are some of the key things: the district supervisor, the FSA County Committee, the local work group, and the state technical committee. Those are the decision makers in doing what we do with conservation.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you. I think that gave everybody a good overview of NRCS. And with that, I think,
Brandon,
yes.
quite a few people is asking for Mr. Ford's contact information.
Okay. Can I put it in the chat, James?
Yes, you can put it in the chat and make sure you include my webpage. My phone number is 615.
Hold on, James.
483.
615. Go ahead. 615.
615-483-6825. And my email is squareoconsulting@gmail.com. And the website is www.squareoconsulting.com. I mentioned partnership, and I enjoy a good relationship with Macintosh Seed. We enjoy a good relationship. We enjoy a good professional relationship as well as a personal relationship. And there are other organizations and people that I've worked with in the past in Mississippi, Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama. And y'all see the little beard I got here, but one thing that my mother always used to tell us is that if I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word of song, then my living won't be in vain. And I'm here to help somebody as I pass along. And I don't know about the word of song, but I'm here to help somebody as I pass along. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Well, that brings us to the end of our first day's program. I hope that those of you who hung in here for these 3 hours found this information to be of value. I want to thank all of our speakers who volunteered their time and their knowledge to get this information out to you. So I wish we could clap, Just some homecoming thing. Terrence, I don't know if you're still on the line. Is it going to be the same link for tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so for those of you who are going to be joining us tomorrow, what we're going to dive into now that you know about what programs are out there, Carrie, Carrie, myself, and Dr. Barrett Temple Vaughn from Tuskegee University, we're just going to take a deep dive into what you need to do to actually write these grants. So a lot of people have questions about the DUNS number and SAM and grants.gov. We'll cover all that tomorrow, as well as writing an effective grant narrative and doing budgeting and how you build partnerships and all that stuff. So unless anyone has anything else, I
And
really—
Brandon, just a couple
Yes.
of things.
Mhm.
There's a question about how they can retrieve the recording.
Mhm.
And I just want to say, Brandon, again, thanks, and to Elizabeth and then all the other presenters. Thank you. You guys were awesome. And just a plug for tomorrow. Again, the information is going to be great. The gentleman tomorrow actually wrote a book that's available on Amazon as it relates. He's been a reviewer. So again, even if you're not a grant writer and you're on the opposite side, if you're just a producer and you want to know where to go and connect with all of these organizations that are getting this grant, yeah, definitely come back for tomorrow for part 2.
And Terrence, how can people get access to the recording once it's done?
So after tomorrow, I can either give it to you, and if you want to put it on the Sarah website or something.
Okay.
Either way you want, we can discuss that.
Okay.
But
Okay.
we have everyone
Sure.
email. We have everyone emails address that registered, so we can send them a link after we figure out where we want to put it at.
Okay, that's perfect. So with that, the rest of hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see most of you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody. Thank you.